In this video, we'll talk about some easy mistakes that you could possibly make, and we will discuss maybe how to prevent them, okay? So here, what we have is just a pretty basic workflow implementation. So again, don't use console.writeLine in your production code. Use the workflow specific one because this is not replay aware. And so all we're doing here is we just got a little chunk of code. We've got an await statement, chunk of code, await, chunk of code, okay? And so let's say you realize, oh, I actually need to make a little fix here and I need to make a little fix here, okay? So I've just got a little snippet over here. I'll just paste that in. I'll just paste it in, okay? And so again, you can see, here was our original implementation. We just wrapped it in an if statement with a patched, and then our new version here with our fix. And then same thing right here. This is that second sort of middle chunk of code. Here was our first version, and here's what we patched in. Okay. We didn't think we need to make a change to this first chunk, so we're just going to leave it here. All right, and we're going to go ahead and run our workflow in our worker. And what we're going to do is we're going to pretend that this is a long-running workflow, because again, long-running workflows are really where these this patched stuff kind of gets tricky. So those are usually what we simulate, okay? So when we simulate this, we'll go ahead and get through this. We'll get through this await statement. We'll get through this, and then we'll break right here, okay? All right, so we had our original code. We patched in some new. Now we're going to run. All right, I'm going to run. Okay, we're through our first chunk. And then we're still in this 10-second timer, right? Okay, we got our second chunk, and we're gonna kill our worker, because let's say this is a long-running workflow, right? And now we've already fixed these two little pieces, and let's say we're like, oh dang, we actually do need to go fix this thing. Okay, so that's maybe one scenario in which you would need to shut down your worker to deploy some new code. Okay, and then you can also see this markers here. All right, so we've got our marker recorded. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and deploy our new code right here. And again, we're simulating things that would be easy mistakes to make. Okay, so we're just coming in here and we're like, oh, let's go deploy our new code. Let's put it right here. Perfect. Let's turn our worker back on. Uh-oh, what did I do here? Let me get my white space, because I'm pretty sure it's a white space issue. Yep. Let me just fix that real quick. This is a little anticlimactic. There we go. All right. Style copy yelling at me. All right. So I'll go ahead and run our worker again. Boom. We got an NDE. Okay. So, white space issues aside. So what is happening here? Okay. So again, it was working fine, but then we patched in some new code here. I'm going to go ahead and turn my white space back off. Okay. And so what's happening is this workflow.patch statement, when it runs in the replay mode, because once we turn our worker back on, it's going to replay. It's going to replay all of this code. Okay. And when it's replaying, this call to worker.patch is going to check the event history and see if it has a marker in there with this ID. And sure enough, it does. That's this one right here. Okay. And so since it is there, this will return true, and it will write a marker to the replay event history. Okay. And now that's where our problem comes in, is because it's going to write a marker to the replay event history before our first timer. So it's actually going to try to write a marker down here in our event history, but that does not match the original event history, right? The marker is up here between the first and second timers, okay? And so that's why we get an NDE. If you have a long-running workflow and the patch already exists, right? If you come in here and try to write that patch up here as well, it's going to give you an NDE. And, that may seem a little confusing, but there's actually a really good reason for it. And the reason for it is that, okay, let's say, in theory, this patch ID is the same on this patch and this one, right? So it could certainly be the case that this code right here actually depends on this earlier code, right? So if the first marker is here, but we're deploying some new code up here, we really want to raise this into E. We want to raise this flag and say, hey, your code isn't going to work because it's possible that this stuff depends on this stuff, but this actually isn't going to be running. Okay. So that's one example of a situation you could be in. Okay. So I'm just going to go ahead and undeploy that. Okay. So now here we are back in our state that we were sort of originally in, right? We had our implementations of the first chunk, second chunk, and third chunk, and then we went ahead and patched in new code on our second and third chunk. All right. So this will actually work. This is fine. And it will run, if we turn our worker back on, it will run this piece, this patched piece. Okay. But let's say we, instead of realizing, oh, we need to fix something up here and put a patch in there. What if we said, oh, we actually, we really didn't need this patch, right? Let's just use this one. Okay. So let's go ahead and try that and see what happens. Okay. So I'm going to come over, actually, I'll just comment this out. All right. There we go. So we took out this patch here because we thought we don't need it. Okay, so let's go ahead and turn our worker back on. It's complaining at me. Why is it complaining? Braces should not be omitted. Oh, I need to just comment this out. There we go. Okay. There we go. We're running our worker. And it's hard to tell because the UI didn't change, but we actually have another non-deterministic error. Okay. And why do we have this new non-deterministic error? Okay, let's think about it. Okay, so when we turn our worker back on, it's going to try to replay this code, right? And when it tries to replay this code, it's going to look in the event history and see if our replay matches it. And what happens is we're going to, do nothing here as far as the event history is concerned. Then we're going to have our timer, right? Very good. And then we're going to come down here, have nothing, and then another timer. Okay, so we've got timer, this stuff, another timer. This marker was not upserted in the replay code, right? And so this marker was not recorded in the replay code. And that's because we took out this patch statement. So this patch statement on the replay, it's going to write to the replay event history and try to match it against the original event history. So if we take this out, it's not going to work. It's going to throw an NDE, okay? And so let's just go ahead and, actually do the complete situation. We could, if we want to, we could take out this patch because it has, there's nothing in the replay event history that could cause an NDE, right? Or there's nothing in the original event history that could cause an NDE. So we can have just this implementation. We could have just this one right here, or we could have the whole thing. Either one's fine. It just depends on your business use case. Okay, so let's just go ahead and finish it off for fun. There we go. Our workflow is complete. Okay, so hopefully that gave you, just a couple ideas on things that can happen and why they're happening. And really the moral of the story is to fix these things. You might just have to let your workflows finish if they're partway through, or you may have to just stop their execution and start them with a new version of the code. So there may be other kind of creative ways you could get around it, but to some degree that is kind of just how it goes. Okay. Thanks again.